Okay, House File 356. It's a temporary custom processors exempt from licensure and inspection requirements. I also have an author's amendment, but I will move the 356 be laid over for possible inclusion of the omnibus ag finance bill. I also have the author's amendment. If you're ready, I will move the DE1 amendment.
Mr. Chair, please feel free to explain your DE1 amendment.
DE1 amendment, some questions were raised on the original bill about who and what this applied to. So this attempts to clarify, clearly establish an exemption from the custom exempt meat processing, licensing, and inspection laws and rules for certain individuals who process wild game. That's the garage guys. It's the same goal, just a different approach. Dr. Nieser from the department might be available to talk about the specifics of that amendment if necessary.
Okay, any discussion to the DE1 amendment? Okay, the DE1 amendment is before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. No other amendments were submitted, so Chair Sundin, please continue with your bill as amended, and we can hear from your testifiers. Reminder to testifiers that we have limited time, so please keep it brief and concise.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair Vang. We have Dan Larson. He's the executive director for the Minnesota Rural Counties up. He can weigh in on the bill.
Mr. Chair and members, a pleasure to be with you today. Dan Larson, Executive Director, Minnesota Rural Counties, 35 counties outside the Twin Cities metro area, and the only organization to advocate specifically for rural county concerns. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon. The MRC board, in the run-up to the session, a member brought this issue up. We hadn't heard of it before, but it was passed by unanimous consent as a priority issue for our organization. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to pretty much leave it at that. This is a culture and economy issue for Greater Minnesota and rural county commissioners. On the amendment, Mr. Chair, I had a chance to go over that yesterday evening. The one concern would be on the income cap, limiting gross sales to 15,000 or less in a calendar year. We see that as problematic. So supportive of the bill, the amendment as is, with the exception of the income limitation.
Okay. Mr. Chair, do you want to respond?
Not at this point. I think we could remedy that going forward. This is going to be laid over, and we have opportunity to work with Mr. Larson on this and maybe perfect it or bring it closer to his approval. Given that, I also have Kevin George and Brian Schatz. They're both wild game processors. So,
Mr. George, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hi, my name is Kevin George. I'm up in Park Rapids, Minnesota, and I'm considered the garage guy. And last 4 years, I've been doing it out of my garage. And every year, I'm getting busier and busier as more custom meat processors refuse to take whole deer in. So I'm the middleman. I just skin them, I debone them. 90% of what I do goes back to the meat market where they make sausage, hamburger, whatever they want done with their deer. And by allowing me to continue to process deer, there's a lot of elderly people that come to me, people with disabilities, people that just don't want to do their own deer. But we all know chronic wasting is getting to be a big issue in the state too. And you can't take a whole carcass across state lines. So last year I was having quite a few people from out-of-state residents, North Dakota, South Dakota. They couldn't find a meat processor to get their deer heart or deboned and stuff. So they would come to me, I would get a debone so they could cross the state lines. And also with the chronic wasting disease, when I'm doing it at my house and my garage, I have that carcass with me at all times. So when I'm done with it, I put it into a trailer, and then I'm able to take it to our landfill where they've got a deer carcass container. Otherwise, people are just throwing them on the sides of the roads. And at least here, I know that most of the deer that were shot stay in my county and stuff. And reading with this amendment and stuff, the only thing that I can see is problematic is that $15,000 cap. I haven't got there yet. I'm not that big, but if you put a limit at 15,000, 10 years from now, when the price of what I do goes up or my deer that I take in increases, I'm going to get there pretty soon. Because in my area, there used to be 4 custom meat markets that would take deer in every year. And now there's only 1, and they cap it at 50 deer. So there's definitely a need for a guy like me to be out there so I can make sure that we get these deer processed the way they should be, taken care of, refrigerated, packaged, and handled correctly. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Next testifier is Mr. Schatz. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
My name is Brian Schatz. Thank you for, first of all, foremost, thank you for having me on. From Nicollet, Minnesota. I'm president of the Minnesota Association of Meat Processors. I've been on the board of directors for the past 8 years, working with them on a lot of different rules and regulations. One thing we feel, I guess, as far as this rule is put in place, the main reason this rule was put in place was for food safety. And safety is a concern of us processors that are making this into sausage. And I guess that $15,000 limit is about 150 deer. That's, to me, is quite a bit. If you're going with that 150 deer processing mark, I believe you should be under some type of inspection, and our board and our organization believes that too. So, with that amendment, I think that's fair with the 15,000, but anything over that, I think, is going above and beyond. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Schatz. I don't see anyone else to testify, so we'll open this up for discussion, questions from members. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question relates to the 2 testifiers in terms of one, CWD zones that may be near where they are processing, where the deer are coming from. Just how do they validate that the deer has been tested, that they are receiving? And then secondly, a question about lead. We've had more recent research that shows that with donated deer that have been processed, there's still lead in there, and just what their experience is with dealing with lead in the carcass.
Any testifiers who can answer this question? Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name's Kevin George. As far as the chronic wasting thing, every deer that comes in has a certain zone that deer has came from. In my area, we don't have chronic wasting in our area yet. So when they show up, I look at the tag, I see the zone they came out of. And if I believe right, you cannot take a deer out of a chronic wasting zone and bring it to a different processor. So it has to be processed in a chronic wasting zone, or that individual has to do it themselves. So you can't take that carcass across the chronic wasting zone. As far as lead goes, me being a garage guy, I cannot donate venison to a food shelf and stuff, but I do take extra protocol when I see where the shot was taken on the deer and work around that whole area. There's probably a lot more waste because of that, but I don't want lead going back to the hunter. So thank you.
Follow up, Representative Hansen.
If Mr. Schatz could maybe talk on behalf of the association.
Yes, as far as deer coming from chronic waste disease, I believe Mr. George is correct on that, that they're not allowed to take carcass, but they are allowed to take the trim with a tag saying that it was tested, and I believe it's supposed to be tested negative for them to take it out of that area to be processed for sausage making or hamburger or other types of things that the hunters would like to make. And as far as lead, that's another topic, I guess, that is important to taking your time to make sure that you are processing everything correctly. Getting the lead bullets out of the deer is important. Just it's not going through your grinder plates, and that's where I believe the contamination is happening. It's in some type of the grinding process. How we can prevent that is just being careful and watching how we go through each piece of meat. So,
Representative Hansen.
Just a quick follow-up. So with the processes, I understand the garage dealing just with the deer, but with the other processors, are you segregating your deer and running those separately, all in a batch, and then cleaning things up prior to running cattle or hogs?
Mr. Schatz.
yeah, so we, I guess in my facility, what we're doing is we stop processing of any retail products or custom. We do some custom processing, but that's done in a different area. So we're just working on strictly wild game for those 2 to 3 weeks. And then once we get past that, we start to freeze it, and then we kind of gear up after the first of the year. So we have time to do separation. Obviously, separation is important because you're dealing with retail products versus wild game products, which wild game is could be considered a contaminant because it's not under full inspection.
Representative Anderson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I support the bill. Mr. George's testimony certainly tells us that there's a need out there for this type of work. So good bill, and enjoy the testimony, common sense. They do a good job out there. So again, thanks to Chair Sundin, and it's a good bill and I support it.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I just wanted to note that a fiscal note was completed and it showed an estimated fiscal impact of $8,000 per year. And seeing no further discussion, Chair Sundin, any closing comments before I lay the bill over?
Just a thank you to the testifiers. It's really good to know that there are people out there acting responsibly and involved in their industry at a different level as far as making policy and weighing in with the state of Minnesota. So I thank them and the county association for showing up and weighing in today. So this is an important issue in rural Minnesota. I appreciate these conversations, and it looks like we have a little bit of work to do maybe on the thresholds, but at this point I would renew my motion that House File 356
I'm not
as
sure if it's just
amended
me, but the screen seems
be
frozen.
laid over for possible inclusion in the Omnibus Ag Finance Bill.